Hello, everyone. I'm Father Alexander Har.
And I'm the Reverend David Marshall. Happy Easter, Alex.
Happy Easter to you, Dave. And we get to
Thank
say
you.
that for 50 more days, or roughly.
49, something like that. We're not counting. Yes.
Yeah,
Keep saying it. Happy
exactly.
Easter. Yes.
And
How was
so
your Easter?
it was good. Um, you can probably tell from my voice that I sound like I've been to a concert or something of that nature because I've used my voice a great deal over the last few days, all the preaching and liturgizing and all those wonderful things that clergy do. But I do promise that I let other people do things as well. It's just this time of year
Hmm.
always puts a strain on my vocal cords.
It is. But this year is different because you are also saying goodbye to people. So you've been in meetings and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I've had a lot of goodbye meetings, a lot of goodbye conversations, a lot of see you next time or until we meet again,
Hmm.
and they've all been very heartfelt, very powerful, and I'm very humbled by just the amount of love people are sharing with me as I make this transition from being the rector of St. Vincent's to then being the rector of St. John the Divine. So it's a it's an interesting journey.
Oh, it's interesting. Yes. But I'm glad that you're taking your time. You're saying goodbye. And yeah, it is taxing on the voice. So
Hmm.
it is, I often say, it's not like we go to work in a salt mine, but in some ways, the salt mine is, on our voice. That
Hmm.
it's what we do.
Everybody carries a different burden. So as we now shift, that's a really important word, isn't it? We're now shifting from the Lenten season, from Holy Week. We're now shifting to Easter. But I think the theme for this episode is that shift is not easy.
Hmm.
And so the question that I might ask or that I might raise is, how does Jesus help us shift from this time of suffering, this time of the end, to now a time of beginning? Because it's very traumatic to read these gospel accounts of the crucifixion and death of Jesus and his burial, and then boom, right? We now have the resurrection.
Yeah. And I think shift is right. The world wants us to pivot. I think that they want us to go through Holy Week and then to immediately pivot to joy, right? And he's risen and all that, and that's tough. It's a tough transition to make. And I've listened to a couple of my friends' sermons, and it's interesting to hear in their voice similar to what I was hearing in mine or what I wanted to do, but my energy level just wasn't exactly there. That
Mhm.
about really shift into joy and new life. It's Holy Week does hold on, and I would opine that the trauma of Holy Week is still actually with us. That for
Correct.
as much as they say Resurrection Sunday, it's always Sunday. That there's a reason why we do this. Reason why we haven't abandoned these lessons. The reason why we still do Lent is because we're still trying to figure this out of what happened and why.
Well, and I think this is part of the Christian life is that we don't. It's not just about overcoming something; it's about going through something. Jesus overcame death and the cross through the grace of the Father who raised him
Mhm.
up, but he still had to go through it.
Yeah.
And so I think this is evident in the gospel reading today when Jesus shows the disciples his hands and his side to say, these are real scars. They're glorified scars, but they are scars nonetheless. And that means that this thing that I've gone through is with me,
Hmm.
but it has not destroyed me.
Yes. And I would say that they're not scars; that they're wounds. That they
They're
have
wounds,
not
excuse me.
they have not scarred
That's
yet.
the
If
more correct
that's a
version,
word,
yes.
right? Scarred over. I don't know what the right phrase
No, no, no.
is,
It would
but
be the wounds are there, but they are not bleeding. They're not, they're glorified, right?
right, right. And they might be itching a little bit if you've ever had a really bad cut and it starts to itch.
You
So,
know what? You
um,
know what? It's my first pushback of the Easter season. I'm gonna say no itching. I'm gonna say they just felt perfectly fine.
okay,
They
sure,
just, I'm just gonna declare it.
sure, all right.
So in the gospel reading for this coming Sunday, we are encountering an immense shift. You know,
Okay.
on Easter morning, we hear the account of, Mary Magdalene, woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for? Of course, it's Jesus. She turns around, he sees him. Or, one of the other versions is, of course, the resurrection of the dead. And Jesus is seen, and it's glorious. Now we're kind of cutting to the next scene. And what's the next scene that's taking place, Dave?
It is a reading that I've been told it's called an ABC, which means it lands in every single year, year A,
Mm-hmm.
year B, year C, from the Gospel of John. And thank God he wrote it. Thank God we passed these stories along.
Mm-hmm.
When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, they were locked in a house because they were very fearful. And Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." So this is the first resurrected account in this way of
Mm-hmm.
where he shows up. And then he showed them his hands and his side. He showed him his wounds. And then the disciples rejoiced when they saw that it was him. He said again, pay attention when Jesus repeats himself. He said again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you."
Yeah.
And then he breathed on them and received the Holy Spirit.
So what I take away from that encounter briefly is the disciples are hiding because they're deathly afraid. The
Mhm.
same people who have killed Jesus, the religious authorities who have put Jesus to death, could just as easily be coming after them.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is, even though they are hiding, Jesus can find them. Jesus
Yes.
knows where his sheep are.
Yeah.
And when he appears to them in a way that they don't understand how that happened, his first words are, "Peace be with you." And I have I think, a different take on this than some people do. If I was the disciples and I see Jesus, my first thought is, "Oh, he's going to be so mad at me."
Mm. Wow.
Because when was the last time Jesus saw me running away?
Your backside as you're running away, or as
Right.
you're sleeping, and he's like, "Stay awake! Can't you even stay awake?" Uh-huh.
Or denying him, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
Simon Peter.
Yeah.
And so this "peace be with you" is to let you know it's okay. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because I love you. Peace be with you. The prophecy has been fulfilled. I am alive. Here, look. And it's that ability that Jesus has to show and tell. Look at my hands. Look at my
Mm-hmm.
side. That I think brings it home because it's a very human thing to do. Um, for example, if you've ever been hurt, like had a serious wound or an injury, I mean, you seem to get hurt all the time by your boat. You know,
Um. Okay.
I
There's
see,
there's
I see,
this one. Yes.
yeah. And sometimes your child or somebody else will come. Are you okay? And you show them it's okay. Look, it'll be okay. You show them the wound. I think that's very important for Jesus here in a very human moment to show the disciples that he is okay and that they are okay. Peace be with you.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that strikes me about what you're saying is, and something I had never considered before, is that the miracle of resurrection, the miracle of new life, he could have also had brand new skin, right? Those wounds could have been covered over,
Hmm.
but they weren't. He wanted them to remain there. And for those who follow near-death experiences and who people encounter Jesus, they still see the wounds, like he's still there. He's the only wounded person in heaven, if you will,
Correct.
the only one that carries scars from this planet up into or wherever heaven is around heaven. That it's intriguing that they are there for a reason. We like to pretend like we're superhumans, Superman, and to show up full of armor and nothing can harm me. I'm bulletproof, and look at this, and then come follow me, right? And that's not how he did it. He began with peace, as the Father sent me, so I send
Hmm.
you, reminding them of peace. He breathed on them. All of these very, if you breathe on somebody, you have to be really close to them. And so that's just showing his, we would call it today, a vulnerable side, that he is deciding to open that up and show it. And as we could say, as the Father has shown Jesus to be vulnerable, we are to show one another the same type of vulnerability. And when we do that, perhaps the breath of God and the peace of God is upon us.
Well, and remember, ghosts don't breathe.
I did I didn't know that was a hard and fast rule.
Well, I'm just going to go on a limb here. You need lungs to breathe, and ghosts don't have
I'm
lungs.
following you. I mean, I
So,
immediately went to Patrick Swayze and the movie Ghost. Um,
but the reason I
but
say that is because as we enter the Easter season, we also enter the season in which people will question the nature of the resurrection. Did Jesus rise body and soul,
mhm,
fully human, fully God in that way?
right.
And I always tell people just look back at the text. Jesus behaves in a very human way for a person who has been raised from the dead. He says, "You have any fish to eat? Give me
Yeah.
something to eat." You know, dead people don't eat, dead people don't breathe, ghosts don't eat, ghosts don't breathe. Um, and so the next question, of course, is everybody there at that meeting?
Um, no, there
Mm,
are two people missing at least.
who's missing?
Well, Judas
Well, yes.
and Thomas,
Ah, Thomas. And Thomas
and,
gets a
and
bad
maybe others, but I mean, these are the ones that we know of.
Of the
So,
12, it was noted that Thomas was not president. And I think I will be the first to say Thomas gets a bad rap
okay.
because the term doubting Thomas is so
Oh yeah.
prevalent
Oh yeah.
in our religious tradition
Hmm.
when we don't say doubting Peter.
You don't
He
sing
doubted
denying
at
Peter,
some points.
right?
You
You don't
know,
say run away, Peter.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Petrified Peter, maybe. No,
Yeah. Cut off the
so
ear, Peter.
right. So why is it so significant that Thomas isn't there? That's been a question I get asked.
Right. I mean, I have my own theory, and I think I shared this last year, that I think Thomas and Judas and their families were close, and I think that Thomas was actually doing pastoral work. I think he was doing what he should be doing, um, and and then and then showed up the second time. And I imagine he showed up the second time because he heard, but that's maybe reading too much. I mean, that might be eisegetical. I might be inserting things into the text, but we do know that the second time around he was there.
See, I think that, and this is one of the things I'm talking about this Sunday, is that all of the disciples experienced trauma.
Mhm.
To watch somebody whom you love die in one of the most perverse and sadistic ways that a human being can imagine,
Mhm.
through crucifixion, is traumatic. And we have these instincts that are within us. We can fight, that kind of what Peter did initially. Flight,
Right.
that's what the rest of the apostles did. Or freeze. You can just stand still, right? And I think for Thomas, this reaction of not being with the disciples is to isolate himself, to kind of freeze within
Mhm.
himself.
Yeah.
And what does Jesus do? He introduces another way of dealing with trauma, faith. And
Mhm.
this is where I think gets to the nature of why the resurrection is so important, not just on a salvation level, but on a human level, as we're talking about it right now, is when Thomas encounters Jesus, that time when he is there, that second time, Jesus treats the disciples the same way. And he doesn't, single out Thomas in a negative way. He says,
Right.
look, see, in the same way that he did with the disciples. In other
Mhm.
words, don't doubt, believe.
Mhm.
I remember somebody telling me the opposite of faith is not doubt, it's fear.
Right.
And so oftentimes we're worried that if we doubt something about Jesus, or if we doubt something about scripture, if we doubt something about our faith, that we've lost it. No, doubts are the beginning of questions. Questions lead to answers and wisdom.
Mhm.
But Jesus introduces, this idea of instead of doubting, instead of being afraid, believe I'm right here. Put your faith in me again. And so maybe as we deal with all these changes in our lives, transitions and other things going on in our families, it's easy to be afraid.
Mhm.
But if we continually look to Jesus, maybe he's calling us to have faith.
Yes, wonderful. We have received many comments from our Easter presentation, our Bridge Between for Easter. And I thank everyone for sending us comments. We received one from our bishop, which I appreciate. And he highlighted the question of who are you looking for? He highlighted it with the very first question in John's Gospel that Jesus asked, what are you looking for? And so if I can bookmark all of those, the last thing quoted in this section that Jesus said was, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. So it's wonderful to put those things all in together. Now, I know in John that there's yet another story about them out fishing, but I wanted to throw that in as following along. What are you looking for? Who are you looking for? And blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. Alex, would you count that we're the ones who have not seen?
I would say that I have not seen but believed, because I don't have the face-to-face encounter with Jesus Christ that the apostles did, even that St. Paul did. I
Yeah.
have the scriptures. I have the witness that other people have given me, and of course, I have the experiences of faith that I have that are from God. And I think that you highlight something important. Faith is a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
It is not naturally innate within us. It comes from outside of us,
Right.
as faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when if you'll, permit me, when I think of all the things we put our trust in, and then we find that they're not true, we kind of get brokenhearted. This is the opposite. Jesus is saying, you're not going to be let down. Look at the wounds. It is me. I am here. It is okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful statement in a world where everything else is going to let us down.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of the psalm that says, don't put your trust in princes. Don't put your trust in these things, that they go away. They vanish. They are like dried grass that blows in the wind. But put your faith in the things that last. And so it is natural for us as humans that we trust things that we see and hear, and that we've gotten really good, evolutionary, if you will, about how to survive by taking those things that we can see. Faith, this gift that God has given us, is something that takes us beyond our evolutionary survival tactics and thought processes. It goes above and beyond it.
And I think it's the nature of faith that we lean on others who have come before us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the eyewitnesses. We depend upon the eyewitnesses. But faith is another word for trust. And so Jesus says, I want you to put your trust back in me. That's what he's saying to the apostles. Put your trust back here.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're so afraid, because you're hiding and your faith is in something else right now. You've lost it.
Yes. So I know quite a few medical scientists, and many of them have lost their faith as they pursue medical science, because they find only things that can be proven. And I believe that Thomas needed to see Jesus, not because Thomas has less faith than you and me, but Thomas saw things that you and I have never seen. He saw this stuff happen, and he was present. He was alive. Jesus was dead, and he knows that. And he needed this further burden of proof. And one of the Renaissance paintings, one of my favorite ones, is that Jesus has a hold of the forearm of Thomas, and you can see the skin bunching up. Like Thomas is pulling his hand back, and Jesus is like, no, come in here, and really pulling on Thomas to touch him. And because of all the things that Thomas had seen and experienced, in particular, seeing Jesus' dead, lifeless body being taken down from the cross, that he needed that type of proof. Would you say that in faith, this gift from God, that God will show us those things that we need for our own lives of faith?
Absolutely. And as we kind of come to our last inflection point, one of the things I want to bring up is I usually describe Thomas, instead of doubting, as brokenhearted.
Sure. Yeah.
And so Thomas is off by himself because he is brokenhearted. He put his faith, his love, his friendship, his loyalty into somebody, and they were gone.
Hmm.
And how many of us have had our hearts broken throughout our lives? Either from a romantic standpoint or from other things that we put our faith and time and trust in, and we got let down.
Hmm.
And when the Bible talks about, binding up someone's heart, that's what I think of. I think
Hmm.
of it as God saying, if you put your trust in me, I will bind your heart up. If you put your trust in me, I promise I will not let you down. Um, Thomas had a broken heart.
Hmm.
And now he comes, and when he says, he exclaims, "My Lord and my God,"
Hmm.
it is a sense of joy mixed with a sense of relief, mixed with a sense of hope,
Yes.
all at the same time. I think those, "My Lord and my God" is just the perfect exclamatory phrase.
Hmm. It's fantastic. From brokenhearted, if not mended, it goes to hard-hearted. And you have run into people whose hearts have been broken, and then their hearts turn into stone.
Hmm.
That cement tends to get in there to try to hold it all together, and then they don't let anybody else in.
Correct.
And so Jesus is keeping Thomas's broken heart alive and soft, if you will, and so that he then can show who he is, and then really to heal Thomas's heart. The other thing is that Thomas wasn't swimming in this river alone. He had the other apostles minus Judas. He had them around, and that they were all sharing and experiencing. And I just imagine in my own mind's eye, again, it's not in the text, is that when Jesus disappeared again, that they then expressed their own wounds to each other, that they all
Hmm.
showed where they had been hurt and where God was healing them. And that's where the new life was beginning. And that is the beginning of our pastoral care tradition.
I think if you're preaching this Sunday on this particular text on Easter, it's called Low Sunday, obviously, because people are tired and they may not come back to church for that next Sunday. But try to convey this particular message, which is, um, Christ invites us into a life of faith, and he seeks out the brokenhearted. So if you encounter people in your congregation who have had their hearts broken by faith, by the church, by others, a lot of people have had their hearts broken by the church,
Right.
to say, what are you looking for? What are you putting your faith in? If your faith is in Christ, it will not be disappointed.
That is,
Make, yeah,
that's very, I was just completely agreeing. That was very, very true. So good. And speaking from experience, from somebody who has had their heart broken, and by the church. So it's do not doubt, but believe.
exactly. So, I think it's just an important dynamic that we need to be aware of, that there's a lot of healing that many people come to church with,
Mhm.
especially the Episcopal Church. I noticed that many people who may come from other denominations who've been hurt, who come here. That's not to say, of course, that other people don't go to other churches who've been hurt by us, et cetera, et cetera. But in my perspective, walking with people who feel that sense of hurt um, is a very special. It's a privilege.
Mhm. It is. It really is. I'm getting caught up on Jesus's breath, and so that would lead us into a whole different podcast.
Yes.
So I'm just going to hold on the reins that for a second. So, but it's been wonderful walking this with you, Alex, and thank you for using the remainder of your voice to convey these things. You do sound better now than when we first started talking. So
Yes,
that's
that's the hope. So I'm going to have some more tea this
good.
afternoon and try to take it easy and um, maybe type more than I talk. But I just want to let you know that I've appreciated your prayers and everyone else's prayers as this transition continues, and that Holy Week was particularly special and poignant
Mhm.
this year. Um, Living into those moments for the last time with the congregation is beautiful.
That's great. And you will certainly you're always in my prayers, especially on Sunday. But you will be even more so, as I know that you are saying the important words of goodbye, and then the celebratory, anticipatory words of hello at your new parish.
Exactly. So, Dave, it's been a pleasure walking with you during Lent and Easter. Now we're going to be in Easter now, and I'm thankful that you and I are on this road of faith together.
Me too. And now I've got some Easter candy to go eat.
Well, everyone, we're thankful that you've been with us today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And challenge us, ask us a question, get us into this discussion, and we'll catch everybody in the next one.
God bless.